We love Jonathan Taylor. He's been on the show many, many times.
Twice.
What? Multiple times. Multiple times.
That's showbiz.
Many times. Yeah.
Hyperbole in showbiz is good.
Multiple times, Jay.
Yeah, no.
But two is many too.
Yes.
That's up there for
Exactly.
All right, I'll pay it.
Yeah.
Technically correct.
Yeah.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. I'm Jay Croucher, multiple-time recurring analyst on the show.
You
Matthew
have also
Berry.
been on the show multiple times.
Multiple-time host, multiple-time appearer, Lawrence Jackson.
several.
Worried Knicks fan, Connor Rogers.
A little concerned.
Yeah.
Don't be. You guys are winning this series.
Oh, boy.
We're going to talk about the NFL schedule
Matthew, bless
released today. NFL schedule release, by the way, is a massive day in America.
Yes.
It's unbelievable.
That's 3 days, though.
As if we don't know who the teams are playing already.
Yes.
No, I was talking about with a friend of mine about this yesterday. I said, because they were asking me about my personal schedule, like, oh, is things easy? I'm like,
You do a schedule
no,
release?
I do. All right, at 11
Chicken
a.m.
fingers on Friday.
Right. Thursday at 6 o'clock, girls lacrosse practice. Yeah. So, no, but he was asking me about my personal schedule, like, is it easing up for you? And I'm like, it will here in a couple of weeks, but, credit to the NFL. Like, the NFL is so brilliant about taking a sport that really only lasts like 5 to 6 months out of the year and making it a true year-round thing. Like, I was talking about the fact, like, we broadcast from the Super Bowl. 2 weeks later, we were at the NFL Combine. Then there was free agency. Right. Then the NFL Draft. Now we've got the schedule release. You know, I mean, like, they've really, the NFL, and then pretty soon there'll be rookie OTAs and, like, mini camps and, like, I mean.
They'll steal June.
Yeah.
Wait, in our lifetimes, they'll find a way. I don't know what it'll be.
There is no greater demonstration of the NFL's power than the schedule release and the fact that it's a thing. It's insane.
Definitely.
Bravery
but
of
I'm here for it.
Christmas?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
They have taken Christmas.
Yeah, I mean, they have made it a thing where you're suddenly like, oh, what's going to be the Thursday night game in Week 8?
Yeah.
You know, and suddenly,
Right.
there you go. We here at NBC obviously love schedule release day because we find out what the schedule is for Sunday night football. And the football gods blessed us. Guys, look at this. This is pretty ridiculous. Obviously, we start off the season, Cowboys, Eagles, Birds are 7-point favorites in that one. I think the Cowboys might cover. Anyway, and then we have the first week, Ravens at Bills, Lamar Jackson at Josh Allen.
Yep.
Not a bad one to start off.
Yep, absolute blockbuster there. The Falcons are going to be multiple-time appearers on Sunday Night Football. Fun young team, including Week 2 against the Vikings. But yeah, I think that Week 1 matchup between Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, particularly coming off that playoff game, that'll be the game of the week.
I mean, just some highlights that I'll point out real quickly as you look at this here on your screen. But Week 6, Lions at Chiefs, that's going to be a lot of fun as well. How about my Commanders getting 2 home games? The Jaden Daniels effect, we'll talk about that. But Seattle at my Commanders in Week 9. And Week 13, Bo Nix at my Commanders. The Broncos getting there. Week 11, Lions at Philly. That'll be a lot of fun. And Week 15, Vikings at Cowboys. Not to mention the fact that it all ends with Super Bowl 60 right here on NBC and Peacock.
Yeah, boys on
company
tour.
men.
Yeah, Santa Clara. Looking forward to it already. Also, we should talk about, I'm not sure how involved he will be in the NFL coverage, but we have a new guest at NBC, and he drinks free today, man.
We do indeed. So not only was this a big week because we announced our Sunday Night Football schedule, we also announced our new colleague, Michael Jordan.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're thrilled. Can't wait to have him on Fantasy Football Happy Hour. Heads up, Mike, our end-of-the-year parties in a couple of weeks. Need you to choose a couple of food options. Right now, chicken fingers and onion rings are leading the group text voting.
Fried cauliflower.
Yeah, fried cauliflower took a weird charge.
Backup producer
I don't know why you
Pete
don't
trying
like
to
that.
throw in fried cauliflower. It's not going to happen.
I like fried
He
cauliflower.
was
Do you really?
He led the
It sort of
charge.
has universal approval rating.
I
It's like
thought
it's a vegetable, but it's not.
Little health conscious.
Yeah,
I don't think fried cauliflower is very healthy.
But it's still still cauliflower. It's just like when people pour a bunch of cheese on their broccoli.
Yeah,
and you
right.
say it's still broccoli.
Yeah, I thought you were trolling Pete with that.
No,
I
he
didn't
was
realize
dead
it.
serious. He was dead serious.
No, I like it. As I said, the fried cauliflower orders itself.
I think you said something along the lines of it was like the must-have dish up
It
there,
is.
and nobody responded.
No.
But,
At any rate, MJ, we're going to need you to weigh in on this. We expect you at our end of the year party as well. But we're excited. Our colleague, our coworker, our friend, the GOAT, Michael Jordan,
You're gonna
joining.
say that so many times this
end-
summer.
Oh.
Hey, you know I work with Michael. How you doing, Lawrence? You know I work with Jordan now, right?
Right, exactly.
I'm trying to be the first fantasy football analyst to be on the Jordan brand.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Sponsorship.
Let's go. Yeah.
You got a shoe
yeah,
deal?
Yeah. Give me a little shoe deal.
I have a pair of Jordans that I'm going to wear around. Oh, my colleague gave them to me. The truth is, my daughter gave them to me, but I'm not going to tell anyone that. It's going to be, you know, MJ gave them out to all of us. You know?
No, I noticed the Lord Don't Lose X-Feed deleted all its tweets about how LeBron, due to his longevity, is the greatest player of all time.
Yeah. You can never find that on mine. Ever,
Yeah,
ever.
smart.
All right, let's get to some of these
anyway,
schedules.
Yeah, MJ
let's-
drinks free.
Let's start off with some of the easier schedules that we're looking at post-schedule release. And even though we know who everyone is going to be playing, the order is somewhat relevant, I think, in terms of rest days, in terms of sequencing. That stuff does matter around the edges. But let's take a look at the Buffalo Bills schedule, who, despite being awesome last season, they have somewhat of an easy schedule, and that's largely due to playing in the AFC East, where there is no other juggernaut. No disrespect to your Jets, Connor, but the Dolphins, somewhat of not a rebuilding year, but not expected to be the force that they were a couple seasons ago.
Yeah, obviously it's a tough game to start off week one right here on NBC and Peacock. I'm a company man on Sunday night against the Ravens, but then at the Jets, home to the Dolphins, home to the Saints, home to the Patriots, 3 straight home games. Those don't really scare you. At the Falcons, I don't know that you're scared of the Falcons defense. They get a bye. Then they're at the Panthers. It's not till week 9 that you're certainly thinking about, okay, maybe. I mean, I think the Jets will play them tough. They always do in week 2. But still, you know, if you're going to invest in Josh Allen, in James Cook, in some of the other Khalil Shakur this year, I think you feel good about how Buffalo's schedule starts off the year.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, this is what I noticed about the Buffalo Bills schedule, though. Like, Ravens and Lamar at home. Mahomes and the Chiefs at home.
Right. Yep.
Bengals and Burrow, they're at home. Then they're at home versus the Eagles, too, where it's like the best quarterback you got to play right now on the road is C.J. Stroud. So, like, you really got to love that if you're on the Bills or you're a Bills fan. You get to play Cleveland, Pittsburgh, 2 teams with quarterback questions, so it's looking up for them.
Yeah, Josh Allen's my number 1 quarterback. He was before the schedule release, but this just reinforces that you feel really good about the Bills' skilled players as well. They have the highest win total, 11.5, and it's easy to see a scenario where they beat that.
Yeah, the main thing that I look for in the schedule release is who do the Juggernauts play in Week 18? Because if you want to play the Kansas City Chiefs, you want to play them in Week 18 because there is just a material chance that they're going to be resting their stars. We saw that this year where the Broncos basically got a free pass into the playoffs because they got to play Carson Wentz instead of Patrick Mahomes. I think that helps the Jets this year, get to play the Bills in Week 18.
Bills should be settled up by then.
You would think
I
so.
agree.
And the Raiders get to play the Chiefs in Week 18. This season, Raiders could be a team that's on the bubble of the wild card, so I think that stuff does matter around the edges. A notable schedule, Matthew, your Washington Commanders, who
That's
suddenly, we can clap the schedule.
I
if you
mean,
want.
well, listen, I was early here, but what has happened here is the schedule makers and America has done what I was already doing, and that's fallen in love with Jaden Daniels and my beloved Washington Commanders. Hail the Commanders, hail victory. There is no team in the NFL that has more standalone primetime games than the Washington Commanders. They are tied with the Chiefs for the most in the NFL, but no team has more. All these networks begging me, get me Jaden Daniels, get me Matthew Berry's team. I feel like that's how they were saying it. I want more Debo.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it went down like
Tress
that.
Way in prime time, baby. Luke McCaffrey, let's go.
The beauty of it is it's a primetime loaded schedule, like you said, the 8 standalone games, but it's not a brutal schedule. You open with the Giants, you have the Raiders and Falcons back-to-back weeks 3 and 4, and those teams will be better, but the Commanders will be favored. And then even you look on the back half of it where you're at the Giants because they're division, you play the Dolphins. it's a solid schedule, but it's not like the Chiefs where the primetime irregular rest will have this massive effect on the team.
Yeah, I mean, listen, week 16, I mean, like, fantasy playoff time, right? You know, Eagles in week 16, Cowboys in week 17, Giants in week 15, okay, fine. But I think their defense is going to be pretty good this year. Like, it's not a great fantasy playoff schedule for the Commanders, and just looking at them NFL-wise, they get the Eagles twice in week 16 and 18. Like, that's a little tough, having to play them twice and 3 times as you head down the stretch.
It's tough, but you'd rather play them in week 16 and 18 than week 1 and 3. Just because, one, more chance that injuries have set in by then, and then also going back to the week 18 thing, yeah, the Eagles, I would say the most likely outcome is either the Eagles have wrapped up the division by then, in which case you're probably not playing their full guys, or there's something at stake, which means that it's probably good news for the Commanders if there is something at stake.
I'm going to say it's more the latter, Jay. When you even look at the Giants to end that season, they'll be the first game. Their defense will be playing tough at that time. Then you get Eagles, Cowboys, Eagles. We might be playing, you might be playing for a 3-way look like between Eagles, Cowboys, and the Commanders. So it's going to be some good football.
Be great. I mean, the schedule makers always do such a good job, especially ending the season with the division, you know, all the interdivision games. Speaking of that division, Jay, everyone knows you are a noted Giants fan.
Yes.
You placed a lot of money on them to win the NFC East last year. It didn't work out for you.
Do it again.
Now that you see the schedule, Jay, will you put more money on them to win the NFC East this year?
I got to say, I'm skeptical as to whether the Giants are going to threaten for the division crown. It's just a concern that the Eagles and Commanders exist in that division, and they appear to be vastly superior teams. And the Giants, they face the Commanders in week 1. It's not an easy schedule for the Giants. It's a lot of teams that are better than the Giants, and that's the issue, really. You look at their first, really, 12 games. The one game that they'll be favored in, maybe, is at the Saints. Outside of that, I suspect that they're going to be dogs in every game.
Yeah, you feel bad for Brian Daboll and crew, just because, again, to start with 2 road games, they're at the Commanders, they're at the Cowboys, they're home to the Chiefs, home to the Chargers. It's not till week 5 at the Saints where you feel like, okay, that's a game they might have a chance. But then Eagles, at Broncos, that's a tough game. At Eagles again, home to the Niners, at the Bears, always tough to play in Chicago. Then you mentioned it, home to the Packers, at the Lions, week 13 at the Patriots. And that's a Monday Night Football game. But listen, Vrabel's going to have them playing. By week 13, the Patriots are going to be a tougher out. And that game's in Foxborough. So, they did not do the Giants any favors. And, they are they're not on Sunday night. They are not on Sunday Night Football this year.
I'll say this.
They have 2 primetime games in week 6 and 13.
I think they're good enough to enter that Saints game with at least 1 win. Defense is good enough for them to enter that Saints game with at least 1 upset.
I feel like they're gonna have a season full of 3-point losses. Like, I just feel like they're going to be tough, plucky out. You know what I mean? But they're just not going to be able to get.
They cover 60% of their games and go 5-12. So
That's
that
right.
type of thing,
Yes.
right? Yeah. So 3 teams have 0 primetime games in the season. The Cleveland Browns, who we saw a bit in primetime last year. I think we saw enough.
We say thank you.
Yeah. Outside of Jerry Jeudy and Jameis Winston, they held up their end of the bargain in primetime. Not much else though. The Saints. Perhaps no surprise there. The Saints probably in for a tough season. And disappointingly, Cam Ward in prime time.
That's what I was shocked about, is that the number 1 overall pick, Cam Ward, who's also an exciting player.
That's the thing.
And
I didn't get it.
Well, and also just you sort of think about Brian Callahan and how he wants the kind of offense he wants to run. Now that he has Cam Ward, it should be a more wide open offense, kind of up tempo and fun offense. So that's a weird one. The other thing is, I will say this, that again, we've talked about this. Super wide range of outcomes for Shedeur Sanders. He could be their starting quarterback. He could not make the team. I think there's a better chance that he doesn't make the Browns out of camp than he's their starting quarterback. But if he does, and he's their starting quarterback, I could see the Browns being flexed into a primetime situation if they're decent. Yeah. Just again, because he's a big name, he's got a lot of fans. Like,
I don't know if they'll be decent, but if he's starting, then you would want that as a primetime game.
Yeah, you could see a scenario where the Browns. Again,
but even the Titans too. I don't know how decent they're going to be, but if you get a chance to have Cam Ward versus Shedeur, then you gotta want that.
Here's what I think is going to happen. I think my man Joe Flacco is getting thrown to the wolves in
Right.
that first month of the season.
Look
Because
at
it
that
goes
schedule.
Bengals at Ravens, Packers at Lions. Those might be like 4 of the 8 best teams in football.
Yes.
And then you have the quote-unquote easier game against the Vikings, who went 14-3 last year. Then you get to face TJ Watt on the road in Pittsburgh. So tough schedule. It gets a little bit easier in the middle of the season, and I suspect that is when they bring in whoever they choose out of Dylan Gabriel.
You
Sanders.
think Joe Flacco get into week 6 as the starter?
Well, they have multiple starters is the good thing, Lawrence, so they can roll through. They can get
Who-
throw Kenny,
who's that
they can
for?
throw
Kenny-
Kenny Pickett, revenge game
Kenny-
against the Steelers if they want.
Yeah.
Which would be, maybe that gets flexed into prime time.
Pickett.
Dolphins, Patriots gets a little bit easier for the Browns after that.
But long season for our friend, former coach of the year, Kevin Stefanski, 2-time,
Yeah.
by the way.
are they going to carry 4 quarterbacks? What's going to happen with the
Nope.
roster going into the season, do you think?
You would think so because you drafted. I mean, it's still a 5th-round pick.
Are they going to cut Deshaun Watson? Like, what happens
Well,
then?
Deshaun Watson
can't.
just pretend
Nah.
that he's just.
They'll put him on IR.
Yeah, he won't be on the 53-man roster.
Yeah.
So you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
Could they sneak through Shedeur Sanders like on a practice
I
squad?
don't think so. Unless,
Do you think another team
because somebody
would
will
like?
need the depth at the position by that point. I
Does
think.
anyone carry 4 quarterbacks on the 53?
Once in a while.
I believe that either Kenny Pickett or Joe Flacco is not going to make
That's
it.
right. I think Kenny Pickett
Because
would
the
be
2 draft picks, like you drafted them, you have to see what they could do.
Right.
You seen what these other guys could do. And then Flacco just recently played with the Browns, so he kind of got the edge there, but I don't think one of them make
He
it.
knows the offense, and you also I've never met Joe Flacco, but by all accounts,
Me neither, and I don't plan to.
Yes, nor should you. That would be we might have to have a restraining order when you think about the amount of money he's cost you. But by all accounts, Joe Flacco, a really good dude and a good presence in the quarterback room. So when you've got 2 rookies in Gabriel and Sanders, you would think Flacco's just a good presence for those 2 young guys. So I understand what you're saying about Pickett, but the weird thing is Kenny Pickett is a former first-round pick. He's somebody that has started, I don't know how many games in his NFL career, but quite a few, and who they traded for. They
traded for
actively
him.
traded for him. Like, it's not like they just found him. Like, they actively went out and tried to acquire him.
So that tells you the disconnect of them drafting Shedeur. But
Right.
whose decision was that? Because you made your decision to trade for Pickett and draft Dylan Gabriel. Then you're also drafting Shedeur Sanders. Now you have 4 quarterbacks, the reps, the roster management. It's just a very weird situation in Cleveland that we just don't know how it's going to shake out.
That's why I have to think that it was ownership.
That's what I think.
And not Andrew Berry or Kevin Stefanski who wanted Sanders, and they put on a brave face for the press. Either way, if you're interested in seeing this play out, you will have to tune in during the day because there are no primetime games for your Cleveland Browns, Lawrence Jackson.
Definitely my Cleveland Browns.
Yeah.
A team
I
that
don't know how we come to this, but they are my Cleveland Browns.
Well, they are now.
They ain't my Cleveland Browns until Shedeur starts.
I was just going to say, you've worn the number 2 Buffs jersey on this show multiple times.
And let's see if I get a Browns.
All right.
We had to
Well,
see.
Wait for his next team.
Yeah.
Their jersey somewhere else.
A team that's going to truck the Cleveland Browns when they play them. The Detroit Lions, who come into the season as the second favorites in the NFC after Philadelphia. They have a really tough schedule.
Nightmare.
Detroit.
Nightmare schedule. They had 3 outdoor games last year. They have 7 this year. Which, I mean, that could be a little overblown, but we've also discussed on this show why it matters. They only have 1 after week 11. But just, Matthew, the sheer volume of difficult opponents on this schedule, look at weeks 1 through 7 until they get to the bye. It feels like playoff team after playoff team.
Yeah, it really, right, again, at Packers, home to the Bears, at Ravens, home to the Browns. All right, so, too good, too bad. But then at Bengals, at Chiefs, home to the Bucks. They got a bye, home to the Vikings, at my Commanders, at the Eagles. But I will say this, especially if you're thinking about best ball, or you're thinking about, I do love the end of the schedules. We sort of talked, last year we were talking about how Goff and the Lions, they have a tough schedule. They have a great schedule, a lot of indoor games up until the end of the year, but they only had 3 outdoor games, but a lot of them came to the. Throw that schedule back up for 1 second here, producer Adam. Do me a favor, throw that back up if you can, because I just want to show you the end of the end of the Lions schedule.
The home games.
The home games towards the end, the fantasy playoffs there. Look at it right here. So starting in week 12, when you're trying to get into the fantasy playoffs, home to the Giants, home to the Packers. That's the Thanksgiving game, right? They always show up there. Home to the Cowboys, That's another Thursday game. Then they're at the Rams, so that's outdoors, but it's going to be warm weather. Then they're home to the Steelers. They're at the Vikings. That's a Christmas Day game, and that should be quite a shootout. And then their only road game where you're nervous about weather is Week 18 at the Bears when the season is over for almost all fantasy leagues. So just in terms of both for best ball and for season-long fantasies, you're heading down the stretch. I think the Lions are going to make a difference. Gibbs, Amon-Ra, Laporta, and, of course, Jared Goff. It's a nice second half of the schedule for the Lions if you can sort of get through the first part.
Yeah, I think there's a case that the Lions are the best team in the NFC alongside the Eagles, which isn't really going out on a limb. Obviously, they came in as the 1 seed into the playoffs last year, but they're the type of team where you look at the schedule, look at the imbalance, look at how brutal it is in the first half, and then it lightens up a bit to your point, Matthew. They're the type of team where you kind of hope that they struggle a little bit 6-4, 5-5, and then their price to win the NFC drifts and gets a bit longer because they think they're going to come home like a steam train and the roster is still absolutely loaded.
Yeah, my only thought there, though, is, and I think Dan Campbell is a strong enough coach, and that team's a veteran enough team that they can weather that storm. Yeah. But what happens a lot of times with NFL teams is when they get off to a hot start or they struggle, it just starts feeding on each other, right? And I don't know if you guys remember this, but one of the points I made when I made Jalen Hurts my ride or die, and people were like, "Are you crazy?" Like, Philadelphia sports fans are angry that they didn't draft a quarterback. Yeah. You know, this was going to be Hurts' first year as a full-time starter. I said, look at their schedule. I said, they're going to be like 5-1, 6-2. And I said, and when they're winning, all the callers on Philadelphia sports radio are going to shut up, and they're going to start believing in themselves. And that's exactly what happened. The Eagles were rolling there for the first, 10, 12 games of that year. And same with my Commanders last year, right? I mean, like, they didn't, quote, play anyone, but they were 7-2. And suddenly people were starting to believe in Jane Daniels.
All that, you don't play no one, you play someone.
You understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, right, because that year,
NFL,
they said that about the Eagles, like, damn, are we actually going to see them play somebody? Yeah, 2 years ago. And then they got to the Super Bowl. They lost, but it was like,
the Super Bowl.
Right, so
they were a ticky-tack, pass interference call away from winning that game, right? But my point is just that if the Lions are 6-4, 5-5, and all of a sudden people are saying like, oh, Ben Johnson was the magic, and they're missing this guy and that guy, and they miss Aaron Glenn, and
it's two new coordinators.
That's two new coordinators, and remember what happened with the Eagles after their Super Bowl year when they lost Steichen and Gannon, and they went through it. That was a bad year by Philly standards that year because they had two new coordinators, and then they reloaded this past year, and obviously they won the Super Bowl. But I always think when you look at the schedule, that's important in terms of whether you can get off to a hot start or if you're going to struggle early, because that does sort of seep into the locker room.
I think it does. Yeah, I think it does. And I think coaches feel it, which is another problem, and just the pressure you feel. And also, like, a lot of these teams are going to be installing new offenses or new defense, or they have new staffs or a second-year quarterback that's taking the reins for the full time. Instilling confidence is really important for the entire team. You don't want to feel your back is up against the wall because you start out 0-2 and everyone starts throwing the stat in your face. Teams that start out 0-2 probably don't make the playoffs. So I think September schedules to me matter a lot. Yep. They really, really do.
Well, the good news is if you're the Lions and you're awesome, every single game is winnable.
I'm about to say, roster's so good.
They won't be
play good team ball.
Barring injuries, they won't be bigger than a field goal underdog in any game. So every game is winnable. Let's have a look at the international games, where I think the one most interesting element of this is that the Vikings play back-to-back international games, and those are substituted in for road games. So they lose 2 road games off of their schedule and get to play the Steelers and Browns in Dublin and London consecutively in weeks 4 and 5. As we noted, the Lions, they will start their season out in Sao Paulo, Lawrence's favorite city in Brazil, against the Cardinals. We have Broncos Jets in London, Rams Jags also in London, Falcons Colts, which hopefully is a better spectacle for the Germans than Giants Panthers was last year. And then Commanders Dolphins in Madrid.
That's a pretty good game.
In España.
Madrid made out pretty well.
Yeah, Madrid's
Madrid's gonna be like, wow, this sport's awesome.
Yeah.
While Germany's like, what the hell are you doing to us?
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Anthony Richardson, is this how you guys throw the football?
Yeah. Anyway, anyone at NBC that's listening, if you need me to cover that game, Commanders Dolphins in Spain, I'm your guy.
Matty does Madrid.
Yeah,
Matty
exactly.
on tour.
Yeah,
in
exactly.
España.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ole.
Oh yeah, that's is that what they say? Okay.
Ole, huh?
Let's say hola to the bye weeks, the bye week schedule, as this is always particularly relevant for fantasy. What leaps out to you here, Matthew? Is there anything? Would you say just in general there is an ideal bye week as you head into a draft?
Yeah, you know what? There's a couple of things that jump out to me. First off, obviously, bye-mageddon, week 8. I'm glad that there's only 1 week where there are 6 teams on a bye, but man, oh man, look at that. The Lions with Gibbs, Goff, Laporta, Amon-Ra. You've got, Kyler Murray and James Conner and McBride and Harrison there. Kyron Williams, Puka with the Rams, Stafford. You got the Seattle guys, right? Ken Walker. And then you've got Genti on a bye that same week along with Brian Thomas Jr., and the Jaguars, whoever their running back, I think will be, is it
Bashal
Tootin there, with him. But so I mean, like, there's a lot of Ken Walker, Cooper Kupp, JSN all on a bye there in week 8. So that's a tough one. That kind of jumps out to me. Week 12. Obviously, not only my Commanders with the running backs, Jaden Daniels, Deebo Samuel and McLaurin, but obviously the Dolphins with Tyreek and Achane, Bo Nix and the Broncos. We think R.J. Harvey's going to be a thing. You look at the Chargers, Ladd McConkey, Herbert, Amari and Hampton, all on week 12 as you're heading toward the playoffs. And then week 14, that is win or get in week, right? Most fantasy playoffs are going to start week 15, but yet once again in week 14 there's a bye now. So you got Malik Neighbors is going to be out, right? You're going to have T-Mac and Chuba Hubbard, the Chubbler.
The Chubbler.
It's going to be out.
Sideline Chubbler.
Christian McCaffrey and Juwan Jennings and the 49ers, George Kittle, they're going to be out the week before you're trying to get into the playoffs. And then whoever emerges from we like TreVeyon Henderson this year. Yeah. I think Stephon Diggs could have a bounce back year for the Patriots. So there'll be Drake May will, in Superflex leagues. So those are the things that sort of jumped out to me in the bye weeks.
I'm looking at the weeks 12 and the weeks 14 because, like you said, you're trying to get in the playoffs at that time. That's crucial. Crucial players will be out that week. So when you're doing your fantasy draft, Matthew, are you looking ahead of the buys or are you just getting your guys and worrying about it later?
If I'm being honest, I'm just getting my guys and worrying about it later. Because I'm a big believer, and I'm sure you guys the same way, and just sort of I let the draft come to me. And so when you're sitting there with a minute on the clock, I'm not like
calculating.
Like, okay, let me think about this. All right, well, I've got these 3 guys on a bye, but let me, like if I'm doing a best ball draft, then I might target like a week 17 correlation. I'm looking more at schedules, but the schedule's baked into my rankings for doing the best ball, so it's already sort of baked in there. I'm kind of the, F it. I'll figure it out when I get there point of view.
You want to get your players, if you start out 7-0, 5-2, then that's not really going to matter once you get to weeks 12 and 14.
The other thing is like, listen, look, it's the middle of May, right? Okay, and so the NFL schedule got released last night, so we're talking about it. It's a lot of fun. And I think there are some fantasy edges, some betting edges that you can look at right now as we break it down. But the truth of the matter is, and we sort of hinted at this at the top of the show, is that we sort of don't know. Like a year ago at this time, everyone thought Washington was going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL. We had no idea that they were going to be, a team that got all the way to the NFC Championship game. 2 years ago, Houston was considered one of the worst teams in the NFL. Every year there's always a team that sort of explodes, and no one expected the Vikings to win 14 games last year. So there's always going to be surprises that we can sit here and say like, oh, that's a tough game, that's an easy game, but until they get out there and they play and we sort of see, you just don't know.
New York Giants. Oh, wait, they sucked as expected.
There is something interesting with them, though, the Giants. Their schedule, their bye is week 14, which I don't love because we talked about how brutal the schedule is for them. The only entry point to make a move to Jackson Dart is very early in the year when they play the Saints, or the week 14 bye, unless he outright wins the job. So if Russ is struggling, that might make them go to Jameis instead of Dart because there's no soft landing.
That makes
sense.
Right.
Week 14 bye for the Giants is not great.
No, it isn't. And by the way, Jameis to Malik Neighbors, please.
Which might actually, it could have the Judy effect.
Yeah, but I mean, last year, we didn't think the Broncos were going to be nearly as good as they were. That Bo Nix was going to, explode in the way that he did. We liked him as a sleeper, but not in a significant way. Anyway,
Bo Nix explode. It's like a solid simmering, I'd say. It was very good.
We thought the
was okay.
Cowboys would be a lot better than they actually turned out to be,
Yeah.
right? I mean, they're just, again, like, that's why they play the game.
So what
as
you're
they
saying
say.
is just let it play out.
Let it play out. Well, like, again, I think there are some edges. There are some things that we feel pretty good about in terms of
Right.
in terms of the scheduling as we look at the bye weeks. But I just think it's important to caveat all this with the idea of, like, the best laid plans,
Yeah.
right? You just don't know until ultimately they play the game.
You mentioned Week 17, Matthew. Let's take a look at the Week 17 schedule where a lot of titles will be decided. The blockbuster between the Cowboys and Commanders in the NFC East, Lions, Vikings, Broncos, Chiefs, which could be for the AFC West, Bucks, Dolphins, Eagles, Bills, which could be a Super Bowl preview, Bears, Niners, which is the Sunday night game, and that very likely could have playoff implications, Rams, Falcons, and then Cardinals, Bengals, which was born to be a 54.5 total. Ravens, Packers, again, two contenders. Texans, Chargers. This week's 17 schedule is loaded with good matchups. Steelers, Browns, and then not so loaded. Jags, Colts, Patriots, Jets, Saints,
By the way,
Titans.
watch the Jags, because I think the Jags are going to be a really fun offense.
Yeah.
With
think the
Travis
Colts are
Hunter
gonna
and
be-
Brian Thomas Jr. and
This is
and
finally the
Lawrence.
Trevor Lawrence
And-
year.
Yeah, and Liam Cohen calling the plays, and so like Jags Colts could be one of those sneaky like 45, 42 kind of games.
I think the Colts are going to be solid as well, though they are very high variance. New Orleans Saints perhaps not so high variance, but the Tennessee Titans are Seahawks, Panthers, and then Giants, Raiders to conclude Week 17. So what leaps out to you here, Matthew?
Well, a couple ones, and we've already talked about sort of Detroit's end of the season, and so, I mean, you could certainly see Lions, Vikings producing a lot of fantasy points and stacking. So again, in best ball, when you're in large-scale tournaments, you want to kind of look to Week 17 because if you can get there, you're trying to stack into a specific game and trying to a Week 17 correlation where it all sort of lines up for you. Like if that game goes off and you've got a lot of players in that, you can win a big tournament, win a lot of money. So Detroit and Minnesota is going to be one that gets targeted a lot. You mentioned Philadelphia at Buffalo. How about Tampa Bay at Miami?
That's what caught my eye.
Right? I mean, like, again, both offenses need to stay healthy, but when both offenses are rolling, a lot of fantasy points. I'm not sure Tampa Bay has figured out their defense yet either.
No, they've made some additions, but it's not going to be this juggernaut where
Right.
Baker's not going to be in a throw script consistently enough.
Yeah,
And now they're injury protected with Emeka Ibuka in town.
Yeah, you might see 80 passing attempts in that game.
Right.
Like you said, if everybody's healthy to that and you get to that point, you talk about the receivers in that game, you talk about the quarterbacks, just 2 point guards in their own right. That could be the shock and be the highest fantasy
Without
scoring
doubt.
game of the week, despite the Eagles and the Bills.
Tua needs to stay healthy. We say it every year, but when he does, friend of the podcast, Tyreek Hill, told us he's going to be a top 3 fantasy wide receiver this year. He's going to be healthy. He's on a
That means
mission.
Tua got to be healthy.
Well, right, sure. But if Tua is healthy and
don't trust
Tyreek
Zach Wilson?
and a bounce back from Waddle, Jonnu Smith had we'll talk about him later in the show, but he had a breakout last year. Of course, we know about Achan. Like, there's a lot of weapons on the Dolphins offense.
Yep. Before we hit our first break, Matthew, early season defensive streamers, what catches your eye there?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you are trying to steam defenses, I think we mentioned the Bills, right? Okay, Baltimore, that's a tough one, but if you can get through the Ravens in Week 1, they're at the Jets, they're home to Miami, they're home to the Saints, they're home to the Patriots. Like, that's really, really nice. Cardinals start off with the Saints and the Panthers. That's pretty nice. And also the Patriots. Home to Las Vegas. So, that's the first game of that new offense is there. Then they're at Miami. Don't love it. But home to Pittsburgh. We don't know who that quarterback is. Home to Carolina. So the Patriots, I think, could be a sneaky defense as well. If you look at their upcoming schedule, you're going to want to dump them before Week 5 when they're at the Bills. Or just bench them because then Week 6 at the Saints, Week 7 at the Titans, Week 8 home to the Browns. Like, 6 of their first 8 games are really nice matchups for the Patriots defense. And again, I'm a big Mike Vrabel fan. He's going to have, they're going to be a tough out. The Patriots are going to be a tough out this year. Vrabel's going to have them playing tough, I believe.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they're flirting with 500 and on the edge of the wild card race.
8.5 win total.
Yeah,
We're a team that picked 4th in the draft.
Which is hefty.
Yeah.
Okay, since there isn't really an off-season in the NFL, stay dialed in with us on the NBC Sports Now channel. Join Dan Patrick, Mike Florio, Chris Sims, and our crew at the Happy Hour for more insight on the biggest news and stories around the league. For more details, visit NBCSports.com/now. We're going to hit our first break. When we come back, some updated top 10 positional rankings, including where Matthew has slotted Joe Burrow and Derrick Henry. For 150 years, greatness has been crowned here, one of the oldest traditions in sports, the Preakness Stakes, Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern on NBC and Peacock. Okay, let's jump ahead to our top 10 quarterback rankings for 2025. To MVP finalists, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, 1 and 2. Jaden Daniels, shocker, 3. Jalen Hurts, Super Bowl MVP, 4. Joe Burrow, Baker Mayfield, who I think will be a resurgent Patrick Mahomes. Kyler Murray, Caleb Williams coming in at number 9. And Connor Rogers' new best friend, Justin Fields, comes in at number 10.
Now, Jay Croucher, you say shocker that Jaden Daniels is 3.
I was being facetious. That seems reasonable. Let him be 3. Yeah, he's pretty good.
He's very good.
Yeah.
And he's added Deebo Samuel and Larry Tunsil to the offensive
Listen,
line.
I believe I was the first person on planet Earth, can't verify that, but I think I was the first person to say Jaden Daniels is the 5th best quarterback in the NFL. Big 4,
Yes.
Jaden Daniels 5, Justin Herbert 6 for me. One of those 4 in front of Jaden Daniels, though, from a real-life perspective for me, Lawrence, is Joe Burrow, who's number 5 for Matthew. Is there any apprehension about Joe Burrow being that high, given that he is a pocket passer? We saw what happened with the pocket passer going really high last year, and CJ Stroud didn't deliver.
Yeah, not at all for me. Well, for first things first, while C.J. Stroud is very, very good,
He's not Joe Burrow.
Not in that tier just yet. Then you look at the volume of passing, 652 passing attempts last year, 38.5 throws per game. That was higher than anybody. And your 3 highest paid players on the team is the quarterback and Joe Burrow. Then the next 2 highest paid is your 2 wide receivers. So they're going to pay you to work. So they're going to be throwing the ball again and again. They having trouble signing their best defensive player now.
That's key.
So their defense is the same guys from last year. So you could expect them to be, the same type of offense. So I would be happy to draft him as the first pocket passing quarterback in fantasy.
I'm not confident that this defense is going to have this miraculous rebound.
Yeah.
They changed the defensive coordinator, but the personnel is not drastically better, which means the Bengals have to throw, which is good news for Joe Burrow and those 2 highly paid wide receivers. So I think this ranking is completely justified. Burrow's going to have a massive year, and I can kind of say the same rant for Baker Mayfield, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, look, you always, when you're doing rankings, you're sort of like, why did the production happen? Can it repeat again? And so to your point, like, we all know Joe Burrow is very, very good. He not only did he lead the NFL in pass attempts last season, but it's his 3rd straight year of being inside the top 5. This is just a pass-friendly, pass-first offense under Zach Taylor, and is going to continue to do so. Like, you don't sign T. Higgins to the deal you signed him to, and Jamar Chase to the deal you signed him to suddenly start handing off a lot, right? I mean, that's where that offense runs. They've been top 2 in pass rate each of the past 2 seasons as well. They're going to get into shootouts. Joe Burrow, he's a lion. You got to let him roar.
Yeah. The thing
Proud
with
fantasy life investor, Joe Burrow.
I was waiting for that. The thing with Burrow, too, is that he's just defense agnostic. Like, the number 1 defense in football last year ended up being the Denver Broncos. Anyone say what Joe Burrow did to them in Week 17? I think the Bengals punted once in the whole game. Like, it just doesn't matter. You just can't stop Burrow. You can't stop Chase and Higgins. Another guy
By the way, they also, we should have looked at their schedule. We were so actually jam-packed, but they always start slow.
Yeah.
The Bengals. That's the other
lose
big
to the Patriots in week 1.
Begging them not to, they go Browns, Jags.
Right, yeah.
Like,
Well,
they're
they're
like,
gonna lose
please,
to the Jags.
Bengals,
Yeah.
do not start this
But they
one.
gave them the Patriots last year, and they lost that one.
Right,
That was
right.
ugly.
Jacoby
And that's
Brissett.
what ultimately cost them the playoffs.
Yep. Let's jump to the running back rankings 1 through 10. Some huge names.
You surprised by Justin Fields in the top 10 that I put him in there?
No, because
I'm not. He
all you
should
have to
be
do
there.
is look at when he starts,
Yes.
where he sits every time, and the Jets are telling you he's our starting quarterback, and we're going to ride this thing out and see how it goes. So I think 10 is like the perfect spot for him.
He ran for 1,100 yards.
Right.
Yeah, and he's never – Chicago, he had no help. Pittsburgh, he was sort of renting the spot. This is the first time I feel like where it's like, you're the guy. We're actually going to give you some weapons. We've improved the offensive line. You've got Garrett Wilson. We drafted Mason Taylor, our guy. So you feel –
Yeah, he's a guy that I feel like, for me personally, and I think if you're punting, so to speak, on the quarterback position, you will go with a guy like Justin Fields because you know he's a starter and you know what he could bring you in the running game.
He can win you weeks single-handedly, where guys from 11 to 16. Like, how many guys can you say that about from 10 and on?
No.
There's just not a lot where he will finish as QB 1 or 2 because, he had to run for 2 touchdowns and 100 yards.
Well, that's the thing with Fields is that he just has that fastball that he can lean back into if there's those 60-yard touchdown runs, which we didn't get last year, but 2 years ago he was ripping them off for fun, and that's why he was such a dominant fantasy player. Let's take a look at the running back rankings 1 through 10. Saquon Barkley, fresh off 2K rushing yards, number 1. Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Ashton Genty, Christian McCaffrey, by all accounts healthy, Devin Achane, one of the highest variance players in the league, Derrick Henry, who we're going to talk about, Josh Jacobs, reliable as always, Bucky Irving, expected to have a more prominent role in 2025, and then the great Jonathan Taylor, multiple-time guest and lover of the Fantasy Football Happy Hour.
Yes.
Let's talk about Derrick Henry at number 7, fresh off that 2-year, $30 million extension that he signed with the Ravens on Wednesday. Matthew, I think we're at the point now where every year we expect, is this maybe going to be the year of Derrick Henry?
We don't
but
anymore.
It just feels like that
We've
have to see
had
it
that
first.
same conversation for 6 years now.
Yeah.
For 6 years, 300 touches. The year that he got hurt, but he came back because it's like I don't know. The wear and tear is starting to turn. He turned 31 in January. He's had over 300 touches 5 of the past 6 seasons, and I'll just say that I think he's the exception that proves the rule, right? I mean, he's not built the same way as like any other human on the planet. By all accounts, takes unbelievable care of his body as well, understands where the bread is buttered as well. And I'll just say, a lot of times we say in fantasy, hey, follow the money. I think the Ravens are among the smartest front offices in the NFL. Every single year, they're so incredibly smart. So for them to sign Derrick Henry to this extension at this amount tells you they're not worried about it. And all the stuff we said last year, that even if he's, quote, lost a step.
Look at that.
I know, come on now. Come on, as you see him. This is him. This is
just
the
walk
NFL.
the dude down. Just walk them down.
Yeah, he's just like,
That's 250 right there.
He's just unbelievable. Of course, Derrick Henry probably best known for being the starting running back at Live at Noon on the Cock, the championship winning team.
Drafted by accident.
Happy Hour.
People forget.
Not drafted by accident. I drafted him. Then I thought, should I have gone Pacheco? But I decided to stick with Derrick Henry. It didn't work out. It did work out for me. Back-to-back championships for Live at Noon of the Cock in the Happy Hour League, the League of Assholes. But what I will say here about Derrick Henry is that the stuff that we said last year, that even if he's quote-unquote lost a step, you're running in an offense that has Lamar Jackson, that is going to always have a spy on the defense trying to stay with him. So just the RPOs, because there's just going to be open lanes because of the threat of Lamar Jackson, because they like to run when they get in close, because of that way Todd Monken likes to call that offense as well. So he's going to fall into touchdowns regardless.
Double-digit again.
Easy double-digit touchdowns.
I mean, he just literally he didn't have a good year. He had a historical year. Yep. This dude 75-ish yards away from being the first dude to run for 2,000 twice. So, I mean, it's like 31, I just saw you when you was 30. So I think we're okay. And what you said about the Ravens signing guys and being smart in that way, for running backs in other positions, just not receivers. They kind of get the receivers when they pass they best days. So
they collect them.
Yeah.
Welcome to Baltimore, DeAndre Hopkins. I feel like that's what you say. Yeah, exactly.
Take the torch from Sammy Watkins.
Oh damn! I wasn't even thinking about DeAndre Hopkins when I said that. I wasn't trying to say that about him, but
I love Hop. Hop's one of my favorite. One of my favorite players in the history of the NFL.
I love about
Hopkins.
6-7 touchdowns this year.
Yeah.
But listen, Rashad Bateman had a really nice end of the season. Can he continue that? Obviously, we know what Zay Flowers can bring. Ravens offense can be fun this year.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be good.
Yep. All right, let's jump to...
Now we just need Mark Andrews to go to another team so Isaiah Likely can bloom. Said the guy with
he
Isaiah
must
Likely.
be on your dynasty.
He is on my dynasty team, and I don't have Mark Andrews.
Poor Mark Andrews, previous friend of the show.
Still friend of the show.
You know what? I think week 1, Mark Andrews is going to end up catching the winning touchdown versus the Bills. Yes.
Unfortunately, it's probably not going to count as much.
It
won't, but it'll be like something to get us off his back.
Mark Andrews is still a friend of the podcast. We just would like to see him on another team where he can produce fantasy points.
Good save.
To allow
spread
Isaiah
the pie between him and
Isaiah Likely. That's all we need.
Set them both free.
Yeah, exactly. Free Isaiah Likely. That's all we're asking.
Cheering for you, Mark. Okay, let's take a look at the wide receiver rankings 1 through 10. Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, CD Lamb, perhaps the big three at the top. Malik Neighbors, another multiple-time guest and friend of the show, Puka Nacua at 5. The Sun God, previous ride or die. Nico Collins, who was the best receiver in football for a time until he hurt his hamstring against the Bills last year. BTJ, number 8, monster year coming for him. Drake London, number 9. And then the ever-reliable A.J. Brown. Let's talk about Drake London, but first, we heard from Zach Robinson on Detective Drake London.
What he was able to accomplish last year and the first year of me being around him was unbelievable. Obviously, the pass game and a lot of stuff went through him, and some of the stuff with the run game goes through him as well. So can't say enough good things about Drake, the person, who he is in the building every single day with his teammates, with his coaches, and then obviously you guys see the player every single day. From a competitor standpoint, it's exactly what we all want to stand for in terms of, the style of football we're trying to play, offense, defense, special teams. Can't say enough good things about him. He is a total stud and got a ton of good football in front of him.
Yeah, I feel like Drake London is somebody that, Connor, we've talked about this. Like it's a very small sample size, but he had 3 starts with Michael Penix last year, averaged over 23 fantasy points per game, had a 40% target share, 2 of those 3 games over 100 receiving yards. And it was never about the talent. Like he was the number 1 wide receiver and by far coming out of that draft class.
It's him and Garrett Wilson,
yeah,
to be fair, but it was close for a reason.
Yeah.
This is the year for Drake.
But London was the first wide receiver pick.
Right.
He was drafted ahead of Garrett Wilson.
Absolutely.
And no one was just like, I can't believe they took Drake London there.
No, it's situation based. I'm in on Drake London because I think, yes, small sample size, but real and sustainable because of Michael Penix. Look at what Michael Penix did for 2 years with Roma Dunze at Washington. Yeah. He always has that big-bodied perimeter wide receiver because the strength of Penix is the velocity he throws with outside the numbers. That's going to be the game for Drake London, is those deep outside throws. So I think it's going to be a home run year for him. And they didn't do anything crazy this offseason to add to the pass catching room.
No.
Are
need
you expecting the big Kyle Pitts here? No, no one is.
Right.
Mooney's solid.
Right.
Ray McLeod is a viable
Ray McLeod.
number 3 or 4. It's Drake London's offense for the pass game.
Yeah, I mean, Bijan's obviously going to get his, Lawrence, but like the passing game's going through Drake London.
Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and Brian Thomas. That's the list of guys who had more receiving yards than Drake London last season. So, you got him at 9, which is great. Don't be shocked if he's a top 5 guy with a full season of Michael Penix.
Yep. Target share will be nuts this year.
He's on the ride or die short list. I'll tell you that for this year.
I like it. All right, let's take a look at 1 through 10 for tight ends. Brock Bowers, no surprise, number 1. Trey McBride, 2. George Kittle, Sam Laporta, TJ Hawkinson, the immortal Travis Kelce, Jonnu Smith, rookie Colson Loveland, who goes into a great situation in Chicago, Evan Ingram, and then Matthew's doppelganger, David Njoku. Let's talk about Jonnu Smith, Matthew. So I think with the Dolphins expecting that there are going to be players who bounce back, and in theory, Jonnu should suffer a little bit off of that, but what do you think his outlook is?
Yeah, I mean, look, so obviously targets, receptions, receiving yards, all career highs last year, had a 19.5% target share, which was 8th among tight ends. And the thing about Jonnu Smith when he signed there was he's fast and athletic. For a guy his size, he can fly. So he really fits into the Dolphin system, and it felt like they sort of unlocked Jonnu Smith, who had always been this physical talent that had never found the right fit for him offensively. They used him sort of weird in Atlanta, Having said all that, I do think there's going to be a better year for Waddle. There's going to be a better year for Tyreek Hill. I put him there at 7. But I'm probably not going to wind up with him a lot.
I'd be nervous to take him. It feels like the balloon kind of will burst here, where it's just don't expect what he did last year. No one is.
I was say them numbers is crazy.
But
he was a top 3 tight end last year.
But does he do 75% of that? I don't know if there's that much of the pie to go. And don't forget, Nick Westbrook-Akine steals 7 touchdowns somehow every year.
It's crazy.
So yeah, I'd be a little skeptical on Jonnu being able to finish in the top 8.
I also think I just think there's players with similar upside and also, concerns that you can get later, right? I don't feel like Jonnu Smith obviously has tremendous upside.
I'd probably go Ingram.
Right,
too.
Evan Ingram. David Njoku, like whoever they throw at a quarterback there, like Njoku, if you get it somewhere near Njoku, he comes down with it, right? Could Tyler Warren, who they're talking about using Taysom Hill-ish, does Tyler Warren run his way into being a top 10 tight end because of all the different RPO stuff that they're going to do in Indy? So I just,
a lot of him.
Yeah, I mean, it's just interesting, right? And yeah.
Yep. Okay, we're going to hit our last break. Last call is next. We're going to talk about our favorite win total bets following the NFL schedule release. DraftKings Sportsbook is your home for live betting, and new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Just download the app and use the promo code Barry when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook.
The crown is yours. Wait. Yes, it's yours. I just checked.
Okay, last call. Take a look at some of the highest and lowest win totals on the board post-schedule release. Bills and Ravens, the Sunday Night Football matchup. Those teams have the two highest win totals in the NFL, along with the Chiefs and the Eagles, all at 11.5. And then the Lions, with that tough schedule, pushes them down to 5th at 10.5. Lowest win totals, the Cleveland Browns and New Orleans Saints, both at 4.5. The Jets at 5.5. I think they might go over. Yeah, I think the defense.
Tough schedule. New staff, but 5.5. Yeah, I would play them to 6 wins.
Yep. Titans and Giants both at 5.5 as well. My favorite win total bet for 2025, taking the Cowboys over 7.5 wins. I think we kind of lose sight of the fact that 18 months ago, going into the playoffs, the Cowboys were mostly the same roster, were the second favorites to win the NFC. I think they have a bounce back year just with greater health. What do you like, Lawrence?
I agree with all y'all. 5.5 is too low for the Jets. I'm pushing that up to 7.5 at plus 200. Look, they get to play the Steelers, quarterback questions, New Orleans, quarterback questions, Cleveland, quarterback questions. Then they face the Jags, Panthers, Falcons, New England. They're all in the same boat as the Jets right now. They're all trying to come up. Winnable, Denver, Tampa Bay. I like them to go over 7.5.
I'm looking at another team with a shockingly low total. The Raiders are at 6.5. It's minus 145, but Pete Carroll didn't come back to NFL coaching to rebuild or retool. They brought in Geno Smith. We know he could play. They drafted Ashton Genty. He's going to be one of the best running backs in the NFL out of the gate. This defense has talent on their front four, and the offensive line is underrated. The Raiders, I think they can get to 7 wins. I wouldn't be shocked if they get to 8. I think they are going to be very, very a sneaky tough out this year.
I
Better
completely
coaching
agree.
goes
I love
a
that.
long way.
I love that bet, and I'm annoyed at how much I like your bet too, Lawrence, because I do think the Cowboys, annoyingly, are going to be good. I'm taking the Commanders over 16.5 wins. Just, listen, let's be honest. We're obviously going to go undefeated.
What line
head
did
to the
you
Super Bowl.
give that?
Yeah, pretty good line. No, I'll give a real bet, which is the Dolphins line is 6.5. Now, it's fairly juiced, but they won 8 games last year, and they were terrible. 2 years ago, they won 11 games. Over 8.5 is at plus 135. I think they can easily get, again, Tua needs to stay healthy, but if that team is healthy with Tua and Tyreek, there's no way they're not winning at least 9 games. So give me over 8.5 at plus 135 for the Fins this year.
Plus money Matthew over there.
Let's, my guy, plus money Lawrence Jackson. All right, it's closing time. You don't have to go home, but you can stay here. For Lawrence, Connor, and Jay, I'm Matthew. We will see you next week. Welcome, MJ. Peace out. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotorWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.